The clink of my daughter's good crystal was usually a sound of celebration. That Christmas night, it sounded like a starting bell. Laughter and conversation swirled around the table, a blur of holiday sweaters and candlelight. Then a lull. My son-in-law, Mark, leaned back in his chair, a slow, condescending smile spreading across his face. He looked directly at me, his voice cutting through the festive chatter. "So, Linda," he said too loudly, "still trying to get rich with those little crafts of yours?" The table went quiet. My granddaughter's fork clattered onto her plate. In that moment, I wasn't a grandmother, a mother, or even a guest. I was the punchline, and I realized the respect I thought I'd earned in this family had never existed at all. My entire life has been built on practical things. After my husband, Frank, passed away 10 years ago, the careful budget we'd built became my sole responsibility. I worked as a bookkeeper for a small flooring company, a job that paid the mortgage on our modest home but left little for extras. My daughter, Chloe, was my greatest joy. I scrimped to help with her college books, to make her prom dress, to give her a beautiful wedding. When she married Mark, a sleek commercial real estate broker, I was happy she'd found someone so ambitious, so secure. Their world, newly renovated house, luxury cars, exotic vacations, felt like a different planet from my own. My little crafts were my sanctuary. In the evenings, after my numbers were done, I'd work with wood. Frank had taught me the basics, and over the years, I'd gotten good. Really good. I made intricate jewelry boxes with hidden compartments, elegant wooden picture frames, decorative bowls that felt silken to the touch. A friend suggested I sell them at a local craft fair. To my shock, they sold out. That first $50 felt like a million. It wasn't about getting rich, it was about creating something beautiful from a raw piece of wood, about the quiet focus that made me forget my loneliness, about proving to myself I could still build something from nothing. The small online shop I started brought in a trickle of income, a proud trickle. It paid for my groceries, for my seed catalogs, for little treats for my granddaughter Lily. To me, it was dignity. To Mark, I slowly understood, it was a hobby for a poor woman, a subject for pity and eventually for mockery. Christmas dinner was at their house. I'd brought my famous rolls and a beautiful inlaid walnut keepsake box for Chloe. The table was a masterpiece of holiday perfection. Mark was holding court, discussing market fluctuations and a recent lavish ski trip. I was talking quietly to Lily about the birdhouse we planned to build together. That's when Mark decided to turn the spotlight. "So, Linda," he began, his tone faux curious. The room's attention shifted to me. "I saw your website. Cute stuff, but seriously, you're still grinding away at that? At your age, still trying to get rich?" He chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. "You should be relaxing, enjoying your golden years, not hustling for table scraps online." The word table scraps hung in the air, toxic and heavy. Chloe's eyes went wide, then quickly dropped to her lap. Lily looked confused. My face burned. The keepsake box I'd made, sitting unopened by Chloe's place setting, seemed to shrink. I managed a weak smile, a mumbled, "It keeps me busy," but inside something shattered. The veil of family politeness was torn away, and I saw the sheer, unvarnished contempt he felt for my life, my work, my struggle. He hadn't just mocked my business, he had dismissed my entire fight for self-reliance as a sad, embarrassing joke. The weeks after Christmas were a cold, quiet aftermath. Chloe called once, her voice tight. "Mom, Mark didn't mean it like that. He's just blunt. He worries about you working so hard." She was making excuses for him, smoothing it over, asking me to absorb the insult to keep her peace. I told her I was fine, but I wasn't. The first incident was small. I had a large custom order, a set of 6 music boxes for a wedding. My small garage workshop was humming. Mark and Chloe dropped by unexpectedly. He stood in the doorway of the garage, not entering, as if surveying a construction site. "All this for a few $100?" he said, shaking his head. "Chloe, can you imagine the liability if she hurt herself out here? The medical bills would wipe her out." He framed his disdain as concern, making my passion sound like a perilous, foolish burden. Then came the intervention. They invited me for a casual lunch that turned out to be anything but. Mark had printed out spreadsheets. "Linda, we've done the math," he said, sliding the papers toward me. "Between your Social Security and the minuscule profit from your hobby, you're barely covering costs. We found a wonderful senior apartment community. It's affordable, safe, and you'd sell this old house. The equity would give you a cushion so you wouldn't have to do this woodwork anymore." He presented it as salvation. Selling my home, the last place Frank and I lived, the workshop he built for me, to escape the indignity of work I loved. Chloe nodded along, her eyes pleading with me to agree, to make things easy. I felt the walls closing in. My independence was being pathologized as stubbornness. The isolation grew. Conversations with Chloe became shorter, centered only on Lily. Invitations to family dinners dwindled. I'd see photos on social media of them at expensive restaurants, a tight trio, and feel a physical ache. I started double-checking my grocery list, anxiety spiking over the price of eggs, the reality of my table scraps budget feeling more oppressive than ever. I'd sit in my quiet living room, the sound of my own lathe in the garage suddenly sounding foolish and small, just as Mark said it was. The shame he'd planted was starting to grow. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday. I was supposed to meet Chloe for coffee, but she texted to cancel last minute. Something came up with Mark. Feeling low, I decided to drop off a repaired toy for Lily at their house. I let myself in with the key they'd given me. The house was empty. As I placed the toy on the kitchen counter, I heard Mark's voice. He was on the phone in his home office, the door slightly ajar. His tone was smooth, confident, the one he used for business. "No, it's perfect timing," he was saying. "The old house is in a great neighborhood for a teardown and rebuild. Once we get her into the assisted living facility, yeah, we're working on that. The property transfer will be seamless. It's just taking a little longer to convince her she's a burden. But the Christmas thing really helped, cracked the pride. Soon she'll be grateful for the help." He laughed. "Sentimental value doesn't appraise, right?" I stood frozen, my hand still on Lily's stuffed rabbit. The words assisted living facility and property transfer echoed. This wasn't about my well-being or even my embarrassment. This was a cold, calculated asset stripping operation. My home, my last piece of Frank, was a teardown. My spirit, my pride, were just obstacles to crack. The public mockery had been a tactical move. In that moment, the power balance didn't just shift, it inverted. He saw a vulnerable old woman and a piece of land, but I, for the first time, saw him clearly. Not a successful son-in-law, but a predator in a polo shirt. And predators can be outmaneuvered. The anger was a clean, cold fuel. I didn't cry. I didn't call Chloe to scream. I walked out of their house, drove home, and made a pot of strong tea. I was a bookkeeper. My strength was in numbers, details, and orderly processes. Mark had made a critical error. He underestimated the quiet woman with the little crafts. My plan had 3 pillars. First, legal fortification. I met with a gentle, sharp-eyed elder law attorney named Mrs. Chen. I played her the voice recording I'd instinctively started on my phone when I heard Mark's phone call. We didn't speak of revenge. We spoke of protection. We created an irrevocable trust. My house, my savings, everything was placed into it. The trust stipulated that upon my passing, the assets would go to a scholarship fund for single mothers learning a trade, with a small monthly stipend for Lily's education, held in a separate account only she could access at 25. It was completely locked, untouchable by Chloe or Mark, now or ever. My will was updated to reflect this. Second, financial independence. I looked at my little craft business not as a hobby, but as a fortress. I used a small portion of my savings, now safe in the trust, not for living, but for investment. I bought better equipment. I built a professional website. I poured my hurt and focus into my most ambitious project yet, a line of custom, heirloom quality wooden furniture. I reached out to a high-end local boutique, not with desperation, but with a portfolio of my work. My story of a late-life artisan, carefully edited, became part of the brand. The orders began to come in, not for hundreds of dollars, but for thousands. Third, relational repositioning. I stopped declining invites. I started showing up, calm, well-dressed, and quietly radiant. I spoke gently but confidently about my commissioned work and my business expansion. I was neither defensive nor boastful. I was simply a fact. I rebuilt bridges with old friends, creating a social network that existed outside of Chloe and Mark's orbit. I was no longer waiting for their approval or fearing their ridicule. I was building a life and a legacy they could not touch. The confrontation chose its own moment. It was Chloe's birthday dinner at a nice restaurant. Mark was again holding forth. He'd just made a comment about get-rich-quick schemes, glancing at me. I waited for a pause. "Mark, Chloe," I said, my voice pacial. I placed 2 envelopes on the table. One was thick. "This is for you, Chloe. It's the paperwork for an educational trust fund for Lily. It's fully funded and will be available for her when she turns 25 for whatever she chooses." Chloe looked stunned. Mark's eyes narrowed, immediately calculating. "How did you afford that?" I ignored him and slid the thinner envelope toward him. "And this is for you, Mark. It's a formal cease and desist letter from my attorney, Mrs. Chen. It details the irrevocable trust that now holds all my assets, including the house. It also references a recorded conversation from January 17th regarding care downs and assisted living facilities. Any further contact regarding my finances or living situation will be considered harassment and will have legal consequences." The color drained from Mark's face. Chloe was looking between us, confused. "Mom, what conversation? What is this?" "Your husband can explain, dear," I said softly. I looked at Mark. "The little crafts are doing just fine. The table scraps have built something you can't take. You were right about one thing, though. I am enjoying my golden years, just not the way you planned." I stood up, placed a gift for Chloe next to her plate, a breathtaking jewelry box made of cherry wood, my finest work yet. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. Call me when you're ready to talk." I walked out, not with a slam, but with a quiet, impenetrable click of the door. The real-life consequence wasn't a shouting match. It was the silent, impenetrable wall of my legally protected peace. Chloe showed up at my house a week later, alone. She was crying. It took months of painful, honest conversations. She had been swept up in Mark's worldview, she said, mistaking his aggression for strength, his materialism for security. She chose her mother. They are now divorced. My business continues to grow, not into a fortune, but into a profound satisfaction. Lily and I work in the garage workshop often. I teach her about wood grain and integrity. The house is full of light and the smell of sawdust and hope. That Christmas comment was a poison, but in the end, it was the antidote. It forced me to see my own strength. I learned that when someone tries to belittle your dream, they are often secretly afraid of its power. The most dignified response to being called small is not to argue, but to quietly, steadily build something so big that their words simply don't fit anymore. If this emotional story of quiet resilience resonated with you, please let us know by liking this video. We would love to hear your own reflections in the comments below. For more real-life stories about finding strength and dignity in the face of betrayal, subscribe to Shattered Voices. Thank you for listening.